Hello cider makers, welcome back to Cider with Kevin. Today's video we're going to be making something a little bit special, kind of unique for me at least, and we're going to be making a Cyser. A Cyser is an apple mead, and when I made this video way back in September or October last year, hard to remember right now, I did not know that this Cyser would be an award-winning Cyser, so I'm pretty happy about that. It got second place in this year's Mead Stampede for the Cyser category, and I think that it's actually a pretty delicious Cyser. With most things in life, though, higher quality ingredients require a little bit more effort to acquire, and that's going to be the case for this. This recipe uses very specifically Cortland apples, macadamia blossom honey, and a wildflower honey that you can buy off of More Beer. I'll put links to the wildflower honey and the macadamia blossom honey inside the description, but the Cortland apples you're going to have to find yourself either with an orchard at around mid to late September is usually when they're fully ripe, or you're going to have to grow them yourself. That's the only way to really make this recipe, and that's kind of an unfortunate thing, but usually varietals of apples they're very varied, and to say that you can make this analogous to any other Cyser, any other apple variety would be just wrong. There are characteristics of the apple that are present within this brew, and it would be doing it a disservice to say that you can just substitute another apple. But you are welcome to try. The Cortland apples are kind of a nice little sharp and tangy. I would like to describe them as floral-ish, and they pair very well with the macadamia blossom honey. So if you want to do this combination, I recommend you trying it with the Cortland apples. Another apple that might be common in your area might be Liberty. And macadamia would probably also make a pretty good substitute, but I wouldn't recommend doing any of the other apples with that. But you're welcome to experiment to give it a try. I'll put the recipe on the screen right now. I made this as a 1 gallon batch to begin with, and the final volume that I had was equivalent to 8 12-ounce bottles. So the back sweetening that I did for the 8 12-ounce bottles will be upscaled to 1 gallon / 5 gallon, and you can really do this as a per gallon batch, which I think will be great. The only minor asterisk is that this was aged on a French oak stick for 3 months, and by upscaling the batch past 1 gallon, you get less and less of that oak profile, which actually might be a good thing. One of the comments from the judges, actually both the comments from the judges, that it was a little bit too tannic, even though it did perform well. So reducing the tannin content by keeping it on oak for the same amount of time, but less concentration because you have less volume, by raising up the batch size to 5 gallons might actually really behoove this batch. And I would recommend giving that a try. That is the way I'm going to be making it this year. Without further ado, please enjoy this video for this silver medal Cyser. And if you have any questions, go ahead and drop them down below. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. In today's video, we're going to have something a little bit special, kind of cool. It's fall up here in the Pacific Northwest, and that means it's apple season. So in front of me, I have 2 gallons of fresh pressed apple juice, single varietal. On my left, I have Liberty. And on the right, over here, we have Cortland. Cortland's a really, really deep, kind of dark ruby red type of apple. This one's small. That's not indicative, the apple varietal isn't indicative of the size. This one is just a small one. So Cortland kind of has like a light apple, smells more like apple blossom-y type of, a little bit floral. So over here, with our Cortlands, we're going to be making a Cyser. We have 1 pound of macadamia nut blossom honey, and we have 1.5 pounds of wildflower honey, but I'm only going to be using 1 pound of it. Overall, we're going to add 1.25 pounds, which would be equal to 1.046 points per gallon for 1.046 gravity, which would bring this total gravity up to 1.092 starting gravity. So for a Cyser, generally speaking, the ratio is equal parts equal parts fermentable apple juice sugars and equal parts fermentable honey sugars. That's a Cyser in a nutshell. In addition to that, we are going to be adding our medium toast, I think that's what it says, medium plus toast, French oak sticks. We're going to add one of them to this and let it ferment and keep it in there for about 3 months in primary, and then we're going to move it into secondary and let it condition in there. But we're going to keep it on oak for 3 months. For our yeast choice, we are using Red Star Premier Cote de Blanc. Let me take a packet of this out. We're going to be using a half a packet of Red Star Premier Cote de Blanc. Lastly, we're going to be adding a tablespoon of pectic enzyme. This will help clear up some of this cloudy juice a little bit. We're going to go ahead and measure out our honey. So we have a big scale over here, and this scale allows us to get pretty accurate gravity measurements. Our honey has crystallized, so I'm going to go ahead and toss it in the microwave for about 30 seconds. So, be right back. All right, adding our pound of macadamia nut blossom honey. I got this in Oahu. There was a local macadamia nut farm in there that they bring all the tourists to. But I thought it was pretty cool, and they had this on sale for $15 each, and trying getting that in the States for $15 is going to be pretty difficult. So, or I should say the continental US, because Hawaii is a state. It looks like they were a bit dishonest about the amount of honey that was in here. This is actually 14 ounces of honey. So we need to add another 6 ounces of wildflower blossom honey in order to get to a pound and a quarter. Whoa, okay, overshot that by a bit. Got 1 pound, 4.7 ounces. So it's about a pound and a quarter. Just a little bit. Honey. So I'm gonna put the lid on this, and I'm gonna give this a shake around, and we'll measure the gravity. If you have these little big mouth bubblers, what I would recommend doing is tightening them on pretty tight when you're doing this. The little kind of inner seal in here is a pain in the ass. It comes out. Well, it doesn't come out, it's just not thick enough to make a good seal. So I'm going to shake this over the sink because I don't want to spill everywhere if it does. Alright, unscrew the cap of this and take a sample. So for our honey and cider mixture over here, soon to be a Cyser, we got about 1.075 on our starting gravity, which I'm going to call is close enough. We're not going to add more honey to that. We're just going to trust the measurements are fine. It's probably just something to do with the mixing that we're not getting that exact gravity reading. A little bit unusual, but that's fine. I'm going to go ahead and toss in our French oak stick, and then we'll go ahead and pitch our yeast. This is a medium plus toast, French oak. Smells good. I'm pitching half a packet of yeast. Lid back on. Okay, so our Cortland Cyser is started. Oh, almost forgot. I'll try and add it through the tube. I need to add our pectic enzyme. Tablespoon pectic enzyme. All right, cool. Now I'm just going to close this up, set it aside. is done.
We fermented the Cortland Cicer at about 65 degrees for 3 months, and then after that, we racked it off into a secondary and stabilized it with 75 parts per million potassium metabisulfate and 125 parts per million potassium sorbate. Following that, it was time to back sweeten.
All right, continuing on with our Cortland Cicer with macadamia blossom honey. We stabilized this 1 gallon of macadamia blossom honey Cortland Cicer yesterday and let it sit on CO2 so that it can not have any oxygen inside this keg while we do it, while we back sweeten. So I'm going to go ahead and purge the pressure from this keg. And then I'm going to open up the keg and apply our back sweetening. This is 1/3 pound of macadamia blossom honey. I'm just going to put it directly into here. Okay, ooh. That's good honey. Gonna go ahead and close this bad boy up and put a little bit of CO2 on him and give him a nice shake after that to get this honey just kind of mixed up all around in there. So it's not just in one spot. So put some CO2 on him. In valve. These smaller kegs they're kind of hard to put this CO2 nozzle on. I wouldn't get this variety. This is the Kegland's Duo-Tight one. It doesn't seem to have as deep of a depth of this valve as normal. Okay, so I'm going to pour some oxygen out. And a little bit more. Remove the CO2, my goodness. Okay, this valve. That is a pain in the ass. Give them a shake. In order to get it mixed all the way around in there. And purge out the CO2. And now I'm going to give them a sample. Auto siphon it, or not auto siphon, wine thief it is. Help to have all your tools sanitized next to you. Nice, good floral smell to it. That's good. Kind of semi-sweet there. Definitely an appley tartness there. You gotta have that heat from the ABV in here. I think this will be quite nice when it's carbonated a little bit more. It's a little bit, it's very tart. Which is a bit weird because the Cortland apples, they weren't that tart when I had them pre-fermentation, but it seems that maybe something combined with the honey to make this a little bit more acidic than it was previously, but it's quite nice. Go ahead and close this up and put it on CO2, and I'm going to carbonate this one to 2 atmospheres of pressure, so I think that corresponds with about 40 at 40 degrees C, which our fridge is downstairs. About 10 pounds of pressure. So that's what I'll be setting this guy to for 2 weeks. I don't do any of my carbonation. In burst mode because I think that's kind of silly. But anyway, going to set this guy aside for a couple of weeks and then I'm going to bottle him. So we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Want to try?
Hello everybody, welcome back. We're going to be tasting our single varietal Cortland Cicer now. This Cicer had been made with macadamia blossom honey and wildflower honey, about 8 ounces or 14 ounces of macadamia blossom honey in primary, with 4 ounces of wildflower honey, and then it was back sweetened with an additional 4 ounces of, I believe it was 4 ounces. It might have been a little more than that. Maybe it was 6. I can't remember the exact number right here, but I'll put it on the screen. Of macadamia blossom honey to bring this to a semi-sweet cider, or semi-sweet Cicer in this case. This was then stabilized, put into a keg, and then force carbonated. I do want to kind of draw attention to that on the bottom here. This is crystal clear. You can see me through this, but on the bottom, there's some wispy lees. And that is a little bit abnormal because this was stabilized and it should have stopped all fermentation. So what I'm hoping, or should have not stopped, fermentation was completely stopped by the time this was stabilized. It should have arrested future fermentations. So what I'm hoping on the bottom here is that that's just some gunk from the back sweetening honey. And we'll find out in a second here. I do have a little bit extra precaution down here. Below me I have a little bit of a blue towel here just in case we get a little bit of a mess. I'm hoping not. I'm hoping this will just turn out fine. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up carefully. If we get a little bit too much carbonation, well then we know it was not stabilized. Ooh, nice, just gentle hiss. Okay. Alright, that was nice. A little bit of a pour action here. Watching the level of this. Comes out, making sure we don't get any of that lees in here. Okay, that's about it. We get the last, I don't know, maybe ounce or so is lees. But other than that, this is beautiful, crystal clear Cyser. It is wonderfully gorgeous. So you can kind of see my face through it. It's kind of funny. But this is wonderfully crystal clear, gorgeous. There was nothing added to this to clear this out. This was just pectic enzyme. I believe maybe even not even pectic enzyme. This was just possibly even natural. Yeah, it just cleared on its own beautifully. So I'm gonna go ahead and give this a nice aroma test. That's interesting. My first impression of this, it smells kind of dark and kind of like molasses. But something, there's definitely the floral element in there from the honey. It doesn't smell like just like normal honey. It smells like a dark, rich honey, which is really interesting smelling. No inherent like apple character on the nose though. It's mostly just the honey character. Right, go ahead and give this a taste. Ooh, okay. So on the taste, sorry, a little bit of a burp there. On the taste, this is wonderfully like, this is like a really like bold honey flavor in here. And then you kind of get that like apple presence that goes just a little bit kind of just like at the back end. This is a very, very honey forward Cyser. I'm wondering if the honey choice here, this is my first time making a mead at all. So I don't really have a lot of experience with it, but I'm wondering if the honey choice here has, if we can get different types of balance notes out of the honey. I chose a more bold, like a more bold honey with the macadamia blossom one, kind of that kind of like rich, full-bodied honey. But I wonder if we had something more delicate that we would get more of those apple notes out of it. That's something to experiment with in the future for sure. Okay, go ahead and give it a longer sip. I mean, the apple character is definitely there. That kind of like deep honey note, it definitely gives way to a little bit of alcohol heat at the end of it. You can tell there's alcohol there, but it's not the first thing that's on my mind when I'm tasting this. It's more of a deep, rich honey note. There's a bit of tannin content there to back it up too. Kind of, what happens is you get that original sip. And it's honey, very honey forward. Then you kind of get some of the alcohol heat, and then the back end is kind of that apple notes with the tannin just kind of washing over the mouth. I would say it's not, it's a good lasting impression, but it's not like overwhelmingly terribly long lasting. It's more of like, okay, that's about what I would expect for something like this. This high ABV, because it kind of just, I shouldn't say this high ABV, this kind of character here is just kind of like, okay, it's there, and then it's gone. It does kind of the kind of alcohol note kind of sticks in the back of your palate for a little bit. Kind of the heat on the back of your palate with a little bit of that honey character kind of clinging back there. Overall, like really good mouthfeel, good presence to this cider, and it doesn't overstay its welcome. So I think that that's actually really good. From a judgment standpoint, this is crystal clear. The only kind of like thing I would mark this off is that the amount of sediment on here is not good. That would be, when I submit this to competition later on this year, that's probably going to be a comment. It's like, hey, have less sediment there, and they'd be completely right. Other than that, though, this is a wonderfully clear cider. It's beautifully textured and it has this like, it's complex is what I'm trying to say, which is really cool. I wonder if now. So here's the thought process here is that I don't usually like drinking stuff that's this alcoholic. It's usually a bit much for me. I prefer to have stuff that's like in the 5 to 7% ABV range. So anything that's, I think this is north of like 9%, and it's carbonated, so it has that like more easy drinking thing here. So this is what I would describe to as a dangerous cider, because it's easy drinking, but it'll kind of knock you back a little bit. That being said, I think this is pretty well balanced for the alcohol content. If I were to do this again differently, I would probably try and make it more of like a hydromel style, where we have lower alcohol and honey content, kind of get those apple notes and more of a light, delicate honey balance, kind of make more like a session drink. But this is big and bold, and I like it for that. But I wouldn't be making this out every year. I think this our single varietal apple in here is getting lost behind the honey, and that's something that I would try and avoid in the future. I kind of want it to be more harmonious with the apple, not more of like mead and then just a little bit of apple in the background. So yeah. So future thing, maybe I'll adjust the honey quantities, maybe adjust the honey variety next year that I make this, because I'm going to be doing this with single varietal honeys. I think that, or single varietal apples, because it's pretty nice to do it with that. I might try something with like apple blossom or meadow foam. I heard is pretty good with this. But yeah, it's good. It's just not my favorite. So I guess rating for this, I'm going to give this a 7.5 out of 10. I was going to say 7 to 8, but that's not really useful. I give it a 7.5 out of 10. It's really, really pretty. It's incredibly pretty. I once again love that little parallax we get through this by seeing the other side of the glass. It's pretty funny to me. But the actual like apple presence itself is kind of missing entirely here, which is a bit of a shame. But it's a very tasty drink. It's just not 100% Cyser forward, the apple forward, I should say. I will be submitting this to if they do it this year, the Mead Stampede 2023 competition. I'm not submitting this to the National Homebrew competition. I have all my 4 to 5 entries set aside for that already. So not going to be submitting that, but I will submit it to Mead Stampede if they have availability this year, and kind of let the other BrewTube creators evaluate this and have their incredibly obvious comment about, oh, it's not clear on the bottom. But I am really happy that it was not the reason why it was not it was cloudy was not because it was re-fermenting, which would be a terrible shame, because this was a very, very expensive endeavor to do this. So anyway, that about wraps it up. If you've made Cysers before and you have any suggestions, I watched the one on Man-Made Mead's channel, and to be honest with you, I'm not 100% sold on that being the correct method to make a Cyser. So if you have good videos or good resources to point me towards on that, just let me know. I think that'd be kind of cool to go down this route in the future. I definitely think the honey choice is critically important, as well as the quantity of honey that you put into this. It was kind of just off the top of my head type of thing. So go ahead and let me know if you have any suggestions in the future. Anyway, cheers and happy cidering, or Cysering.